So now we get to decide what instructional strategies, we think that would work best with each of our groups. And if April, we could start with close to proficiency first. So these are the students, if we can kind of recall, they did not cite strong or accurate textual evidence to support their conclusions. And again, we kind of saw that they weren't selective. They included pertinent details, but they weren't exactly the best that were offered in the text. So then when it came time to explain them, they kind of set themselves up for a little bit of difficulty. And Diane and I were actually talking a little bit about this because as we've been working through this close reading, we've had these 4 steps that we've been putting in place for kids. One of the steps of the close reading was to have kids circle and annotate words and ideas that they don't understand. The other one was to kind of section off the text and find the author's big idea where, we wanted the kids to kind of say, what's the author want me to know? What's the author trying to tell me here? And we kind of found because these kids could answer inferential question and explicit thinking, they can do that. So that perhaps as part of their close reading process, they can annotate in a different way in regards to the question. I went to a training on Tuesday, and we actually did a little activity where we read a piece of text, and then we were asked a question, and then you went back and annotated, put a check mark where you found evidence of this occurring. So then I was thinking, with this specific question, had we said, go back to the text and put a check mark next to any example of what something monkeys do in groups. Now, go back to the text and circle any of those ideas that have to do with surviving. So getting kids to annotate about the specific question will help maybe guide their writing a little bit better, because had they maybe had said, oh wait, I'm pretty grooming might not be as closely related to survival as gathering food or, working together to fight off a predator. Playing together and hopping from branch to branch, I might have trouble having to connect that to survival. So, I was thinking that perhaps we continue with the close reading process, but instead of having them do a lot of this annotating on stuff that I think a lot of these kids do automatically, that they're annotating on the question that they're going to be writing about.
So have that strategy become more specific.
Right. Because close reading in terms of what you annotate about can be tons of things. And we just kind of wanted, because we had these students that couldn't understand explicit information, we were like, let's do the basics. Do you understand the words? And do you get the big idea? But these kids clearly can do both of those things based on our stuff. So let's...
Have you provided training for the people that weren't at your training?
Well, no, and I really haven't had any training either. I just participated in an activity. So then, obviously this is when we get together as a group to plan specifically. We might want to throw, because it does matter on the question. So we may want to, as we pull materials, come up with some questions that we think would be good.
And I think also as an introduction to doing this, using the monkey.
Sure, absolutely.
Using the monkey
Using
article
a familiar text.
in a different
Right,
way.
okay, because they're already familiar with it.
Exactly, but this way, to, like you said,
Good
to
idea.
have them take apart the groups versus survival.
Right.
Are you comfortable with this?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Students far to go, but likely. Oh, sorry. Back up. Learning environment. I do think this is a strategy that everybody should get, because I think everybody's writing needs to improve. So if we can kind of get kids to pay attention to the question that they're writing about and how important it is to cite the textual evidence from the text, because that was something that, if you noticed, it repeated itself quite frequently. So I think we should do this in whole group. I do think that you are going to then do it again in small group with these students. I think that we are going to see this in students. We'll have them do it in work, and they're going to have to be writing about it. I would say 40 minutes for your whole group, and then, I do think that you're going to have to...
You're going to redo it in small groups.
And I think these
as
kids
well.
need to have lots of different texts. I think sometimes we spend too much time with one text, so that when they go to a situation like this where, you have a certain amount of time where they need to be exposed to lots of different kinds of text. So
That actually happened on our Global Scholar testing yesterday. Several of my children spent too much time very closely reading and rereading, and they said, mine turned off. And it said I was here for 15 minutes. And, you know, here we've had days of rereading and annotating and,
The kids
So they're
have to
doing it.
start getting it, like, what's for me.
Right.
Like, I have to stop and clarify things for me. If I don't need to clarify anything, then I don't have to stop. Right, so, you know, if this is a skill that they're mastering, then,
I think this is a step in the learning, the overgeneralization.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
I'm
we
gonna
had to
take a
start
little question, I'm
somewhere.
gonna read it 5 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you
and
have to do
underline
what
all
works for
my
you.
information because Miss Sedino will need proof that I understand.
So I understood everything, so I will underline
Now,
everything.
and we may clarify this as we go on, but 40 minutes seems like a long time for
For a
that.
whole group?
No.
I don't know, it just seems to take a while by the time you because you're rereading the text, and you know, this is in writing, so then they're gonna have to annotate, and then you would hopefully,
Are you going to be, well, and I guess when I'm jumping a step ahead, but in that 40 minutes, this is more teacher-directed.
yes.
Okay.
It is, but I think some of this, you know, it's going to be dependent on your kids, kind of like when we do our writing lessons. Some of them are going to be able to just go right into the writing piece where you may have to kind of keep some of them a little bit longer to help them with that writing piece because you have everybody. So you are going to have to, but I think that is going to take some time. Now, when you get to the reading group portion of it, it's going to be very teacher-directed because those are the kids that couldn't do it. But you're going to have, some of us have 50% of our kids that already can do this, so.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and that's another thing, because we do have a big portion of our students that are
Right, so
already
you're not
doing
going to
this,
want to
so-
model and interactively write for everybody, because
Right.
these kids can go and do it.
Right.
So,
So we get started in the whole group, and then as we monitor what the children are doing, they can get sent
Right.
back to work independently during that 40-minute period.
So they'll have guided practice during this.
oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Students, far to go but likely, these were the students who struggled to form accurate inferences from what they had read. Our inference of why that occurred was that, we thought that students had had difficulty understanding some vocabulary or how a vocabulary word affects the meaning of that sentence. We also don't see that these students take the time to clarify the questions and answer choices when they're taking a test, and I think, again, that was part of a stamina issue. Again, these are the kids that when I was really thinking about it, and I only had one student in this group, so I thought about him and what he did, and I'm just like, I think it is a vocabulary issue. I don't think he pays close enough attention to how those words impact what the text is saying.
Okay, Diane, how about you? You had 2 kids.
I had 2 children, yeah, Tina and
Vocabulary definitely
definitely for both of them. And for Tina, I did have her try to read the text first, and then I did read to her, provided that accommodation. Tatiana is a mystery. We have had her to SST. She does not have the stamina to continue on to read it. She can read and
Could
talk
she
to me
read the
about
text?
it. She could read the text.
Okay.
But as far as answering the questions about it, she's very much in a hurry. I noticed that. Actually, on Global Scholars, she was finished in 15 minutes, so I can
So you're seeing
infer
this
she's
on
not.
other.
Yes,
Okay.
it's consistent all the way through.
And I would agree with you too, as far as my kids in that section as well. They're just rushing through it and probably not rereading and taking the time to clarify those words that they don't understand. For example, Cameron has circled predators, so he needed to clarify that word, and I don't think he really clearly understood what that word meant at the end. Predators.
And I know that Cassie isn't here, but Preston, her little guy that's in there, he is speech and language, so I can imagine the vocabulary sometimes, or the language and syntax of a sentence can trick him up at sometimes. And her little girl, Jaden, she even conferenced with her afterwards, she was like, this didn't even make sense. And, when she was reading her writing, and Jaden said, I just want to be done. So, I do think I think stamina is an issue with some of these students. And we always want to say, oh, they don't work hard, they don't care. They care, but they're spent. I think they really are.
Truly can.
What we've read is that close reading is a strategy to improve
increase-
stamina.
Yep,
So
and
I
this
think
text we
by
pick, so.
using some of these strategies, it's really going to make a difference with that as
And
well.
I know Brandon and Tanaya were both absent, So when they came back, it was one of those where she had given it to them, you know, independently, and they just really. So I don't think, because they didn't take the test in the setting with everyone else, I don't think they put forth
We
their
can-
best efforts, so.
Sometimes we just need to make that kind of an inference, and just by observing how they did it. Oh, okay, I need to get done and back to what the group's doing, so.
This is where I kind of, would love to hear some input from, Mary and even Susan. We did spend quite a bit of time talking about how to clarify ideas and words. And we spent our whole, the last month teaching everybody, when you're clarifying something for yourself, because a lot of times the kids wanted to clarify, can you clarify this for me? And we talked about, obviously rereading the sentences before, sentences after, using photographs in the text, using text resources, like sometimes like informational text will have a word box, using, sometimes kids are like, can we think about what we already know about that word? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's probably the first thing you should do. But sometimes it was a matter of just stepping back from the text for a minute and saying, oh, wait, I've heard that word before, it means this, or I kind of got the idea of it. We also talked about, putting a word in it, taking that word out and putting a word in its place that would make sense, which, again, Global Scholar, kids had to do that at sentence level, and they were like, I have tried all my strategies. Well, it said blank means blank. And I was like, well, is there any cute, because it was like they had been taught these strategies, but when you don't have a sentence to do it in, it doesn't really work.
And they'd raise their hand and say, I tried to put another word in, but I don't know what these other words mean either. Like, okay.
So those are the things that we've tried. Part of me feels like they need more time with it. They need more experience with different text, a lot more practice. However, if any of you have anything that you are doing, because Mary, again, you have a huge group of kids that English is not their first language, yet they're able to, have some power over it when it comes to understanding the text. So, if you have any strategies.
I want to just isolate the ones that are struggling and not speak to the kids who are doing well. I think what you said about more time, because in my small group now, I've got the poster up and I'm trying to emulate what they're getting in the classroom. They
Which
don't
is
need
awesome.
something different. They need more of the same.
Okay.
In small group, with a repeat of it. And so even with the stronger students, I've got all of those National Geographics. And so we're in inference now. We've done author study, and now we're inferring from their craft. So my lessons are different, but they complement and go on. Cameron and Tina specifically, Tina in particular cannot read the text. She wants to do well, and she is mirroring. It was so cute yesterday. She sat down with the text. I worked with Camilla, and there she was. She was attempting. But when you can't access the text for different reasons, so if we
How
simplify.
does she do when you read it to her, though? Because she gets that accommodation for grade level
She
text.
she
She does it.
She
yes.
does it. She's
That's
very
awesome.
intelligent,
They can
and that's the thing. And she's come a long way. The beauty of my job is that I see the progress over time working with the same students, and she's just done an incredible job. And I think we're close to bumping her over. I really believe that. I mean, maybe Pollyanna. But we've got, for me, I want to get that text at a readable level so that they can practice these strategies and stop and not have to continue to give grade level text.
Well, and that's what we
and try
did
to-
this
to
last round.
do it.
They were exposed to grade level text in whole group because this was the strategy we did for everyone. But then in reading group,
Right.
my
Of
little,
course, yeah.
it was the National Geographic Young Explorer, where
Right.
they could read it and do it for themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
So I just, and not so much in terms of even your ELL kids, but we do have quite a group of kids in here that aren't even, related to ELL. So I just was thinking, if you think of something that, would better what we're already
Well,
doing, that would
in
even apply to
small
kids
group,
who aren't ELL.
When we read and the other thing about going off and reading on their own, I don't choose to do that. I have precious 30 minutes with my kids, and so if I'm going to utilize my instructional time, I don't want them going off and reading independently too much of the time. Yes, maybe small pieces, but wanting to guide that. But vocabulary is so key, and perhaps that's what these non-ELL students.
Do you think
So-
what we're doing currently is working? Just keep going?
Well, I do think that they need more time, and I think explicit strategy teaching so that they can, over time, get that and figure it out. In my group, they all don't understand different words. So instead of me pulling out words, I've never chosen to do it that way. These are the 5 words we're going to work on. Well, 3 of them know them, and 2 of them, So they have a process where they ding, ding, ding. They let me know. And so we approach the words individually that the different students don't know.
That is
And
a
then
good
I
idea.
separate myself out. It's like, okay, Angelina, what do you guys think that word means? Cameron, so that they're peer learning, which I always think is a plus, as opposed to teacher imposed. We jump in when we're needed, but they can learn from one another, I think, a lot
I think that's a
quicker.
good time management issue, because I do know that when we were in reading group and, modeling this and then having them, take over some responsibility of that clarifying, you did have kids that needed different words clarified for each other. And of course, they want to jump in and clarify for each other when I want them to develop their independent clarifying
right.
skills. But then you have a kid who's sitting there listening to all this conversation about a word they already know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's a good point that,
So what's the selected strategy?
Um,
I've heard a lot of dialogue,
Yeah,
but
we're going to continue with the 4 steps of close reading, so that they're going to continue to reread the text to clarify words and ideas that they don't understand by annotating in the text, and then to continue to develop clarifying strategies. And I think we are going to have to give them lots of opportunities to do. And I think we're going to have to continue to model it a little bit, and then start to have them do some of that on their own without them wasting instructional time listening to everybody else's.
And when we build in success, that's amazing, the carryover. So if the text is on their level and they're utilizing the strategies that have been taught, it moves them far more forward than without that success.
One of the 4 strategies of reciprocal teaching is clarifying, and we have some very nice resources. One of them is that reciprocal teaching strategies at work, and it has specific lessons just for clarifying. So maybe that would be a good resource to kind of look at and see if we can find some lessons.
From what, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was more of like clarifying for someone else.
Well, it teaches them how to do it for themselves, though.
Because that's where we want
It's
them.
where
'Cause
you're
that's the
building
problem, is
strategies.
that they are so used to saying, I need this word clarified. Who can clarify it for me? Well, to be that successful reader, you need to be able to use those strategies to clarify something for yourself. So that definitely could be a resource on some different strategies we haven't used yet.
And a key piece to that is reflecting. Then when you're done reading, going back and reflecting, oh, I used this strategy today to clarify, how did that help me? What type of clarifying did I do?
Conversation that we've been focusing on in group. They will come to group and say, this is a word that I clarified, and we say, what did you do about it?
Clarify
And they say, well,
this,
first
how
I
it
did
helped
this,
me.
but that didn't work, so then I did this, and that didn't work. And then so they talk about that process of what they went through to get to the point. And sometimes they still were unsure of what the word meant, and they had to move on in their reading.
Another resource for reciprocal teaching that goes beyond that book too, that I'll get to you, okay?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I think, again, small group instruction, you're going to be giving this in reading group. It's going to be your 30-minute, 25 to 30-minute guided reading group time. Materials, you're going to need text at the student's instructional reading level. Reciprocal teaching materials that April mentioned, we can use, and certainly Susan, if you have anything that you want to share, so that we can kind of continue to develop these strategies that kids can use when they don't understand what a word means.
Is it a book, Susan, that you
yes.
have? Okay.
In terms of assignments, they're going to be reading text. They're also going to be annotating. So, making a note of words and ideas that they don't understand. And then, of course, I think you're going to have to observe, and have them discuss and share what strategies they used. I don't think that you want to waste a whole lot of time having them write all that down.
No.
Like just having a discussion about it. The intervention students were the students that struggled to make inferences as well.
Very small group.
Do they struggle to make inferences when you're doing grade level text?
I didn't have anyone,
No.
and you didn't either. So we're talking about 3 kids.
Right.
And so Jaquavius and Nicholas, what do you
Did they
notice?
struggle to make inferences when they had grade level texts?
Yes, because they are both,
So
Be-
Susan, what did you just
They,
say?
they cannot read it. They're both at a, the end of first grade.
I'm sorry,
level.
I meant instructional
When you're,
level, I'm
like-
sorry.
Instructional level?
Yeah.
Jaquavius actually does a pretty good job when it's something at his level that he can read.
on your
However,
see that
level.
too?
Yes, on his level.
he tends to understand things at his level very well and talk about them. He has a good background knowledge. He really labors to read even at his instructional level is a slow process for him right now. He's come a long way this year, but he has to become more efficient at it. That's the stage he's at. He knows what to do, but the efficiency is not always there.
Okay.
And like Susan and I were talking, he misses some important vocabulary sometimes, but he's still be able to make the gist of what the whole entire thing's about and draw a conclusion, even though he's missing important vocabulary.
I'm working specifically with him and with the 3 cueing. Does it look right? Does it sound right? Does it make sense? Because he was so focused on decoding, and I'm trying to move him away from that because he's not very efficient at it.
What's the reading
I'm gonna
level?
bog him down. I was able to get him to pass 19. 19.
Okay.
It was not easy. It was not smooth, but he worked through it.
So he's still
and
about a
told
year
me about
below.
it. Yes, he is. But considering he was, according to his teacher, on about a level, what was it in February?
11, she-
11.
Has he been SST'd?
Yes, he has, but
Okay.
we were supposed to come back and meet
Okay.
at the end of the year.
He's also in lab with Brenda. What do you notice?
The similar type things, as long as the text is a text that he's comfortable and can read, his comprehension, his understanding,
Matches his
it
reading
matches
ability.
his ability.
Do you have Nicholas too in lab?
Yes.
What
And
about him?
similar type thing, but Nicholas needs to constantly be reinforced to focus because he's a little bouncy and has attentional.
Has he been through SST?
Nicholas?
Yes.
in the past,
Yes. I think Denise also took him this year.
Nicholas also sometimes does not get the gist of things. He can read the words
That is
to you.
correct.
And
Yes.
actually read those words exactly, and that.
He
miss
has
the
no
point.
idea what they mean.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
Yes.
right.
so it's a very different.
So you kind of
issue.
sound like you got, well, we only have 3 kids, so it's kind of hard to
Right,
like.
right.
To make it
Right.
huge.
But again, we're saying that they're struggling to form inferences from what they read, but I'm hearing that the
Well, I'm
real
hearing
problem
one-
is
one
they can't
can't.
read.
Well,
They're struggling with
Jaquavius-
reading, so.
Jaquavius is
Now,
struggling
Tanae
with
can read
reading.
just fine. I know that she, is reading, can read grade level text.
Yeah.
So hers doesn't pay one bit of attention to what's saying.
Right.
Nicholas, I think I'm hearing both of them. You're saying he sometimes can read it all, but he doesn't get the gist.
And some text is too difficult for
And
him.
some
It's
text
a
is too difficult, and
combination with
Jaquavius needs
him.
to learn how to read, so.
Right.
And for example, the first question for Nicholas, he put that this article was about, or this text was about students learning about zoo animals. So he's just not really understanding the gist of it, rather,
But what do you see in
Jaquavius
group?
does.
Because that's gonna be a better picture than, one little test that you gave them.
when he's reading grade level appropriate text, he gets Jaquavius understands it more so than Nicholas just,
But instructional level or grade level?
as far as.
Are you
His
doing his instructional levels?
When he's in
Not-
reading group and he's reading things that at his level that he can read, do you see the same things or do you see his comprehension increasing? Or is it hit or miss or?
Yeah, it's kind of, he's not really.
So we
he's not
have to
really
pick a
grasping
focus.
it.
So obviously, because there are so few, it's not like you're gonna be meeting with these kids in an isolated group. This might be something where we address it in lab, because Jaquavius and Nicholas are both in lab, so we could put some practices in place that you could use.
We're using
Is
the
Tanae,
close
I
reading
don't,
strategy.
Mrs. Casto isn't here, so I apologize. I don't believe that Tanae is in lab.
I do not.
And I don't know that she always falls in this section, but I know that she does often have a comprehension issue. So,
So what are we going to do to help them?
Well, with Jaquavius, I'm working with him now, and his reading, his ability to just read the text has improved greatly since February. And you were working with him last time in lab, so I think we're on the right track with him.
so what I hear
It's
you
just going to
saying
take time.
is that you think these kids need to continue to work on their reading skills?
At least, yes.
Well, they probably all need to
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, 'cause
It's
none
not
of
a grade
There's
level
only
yet.
3 of
To
them.
work
Yeah.
on fluent reading and
Right.
comprehension.
Work on those general reading skills, building in those cueing systems, does it look right, sound right, make sense? I think the,
General word understanding,
Yeah.
Vocabulary.
yeah.
the learning environment, I'm hearing a lot of different things. I hear intervention, I hear after-school
After-school.
lab, obviously guided reading groups. So it sounds like these kids are gonna get, lots of, extra practice with this. In terms of time duration, I think it's gonna vary depending on what kid it is. I mean, I certainly would give them their 25 minutes of reading group, because that's a given. But might wanna put a little plus sign next to that, because we know that at least 2 of them are gonna get way
Get
more
an
than that.
School,
intervention.
yeah.
Right.
Or an intervention too, yeah.
Materials,
I think grade level, sorry,
instructional level text.
test.
And in terms of their assignments, because they are going to be reading, I would maybe create like a little checklist. If we're focusing on like them using those, like I hear Jaquavius, you're talking about him using meaning cueing. Like he's so focused on the visual information that he's not making sense of what he's reading. Like, just kind of keeping, does it look right, sound right, make sense? What do you see him doing? So that, you can provide more practice and getting them to put all of those things together.
I think it would be interesting too, under the assignments, is to give them instructional level text and ask them to do something
text.
similar to this and then see
Which I
how
think-
it
well, and I was
it
thinking
goes.
the independent level. I was thinking the same
Right.
thing, if you give it
Bump
to
it
them
down
at
a
the
little bit,
Oh, and the
independent
independent level,
and
okay.
then see if they can use the strategies, then they get the practice and they're successful, and then you transition them into the instructional piece.
And I know
to see
that
how
Mrs.
that
Castro was doing that, because in reading group, they were reading their instructional level text and going through these same thinking, so I'll have
And
to
the
see.
same with Tina and Camilla are in the same group.
But I
doing
think
the same
Mary
thing on
brings up a
very
good point.
lower.
Not instructional, independent.
Yeah,
So they're
I
not
think,
spending
right.
any time really having to problem solve through word knowledge. Because I think that's the problem. These kids are already behind, so you hesitate sometimes to, put them in a book that's even lower than what they can read. But then that does allow them to step back from a minute and not invest all of that energy into.
Well, I think it's
into
hard
reading.
to say that our identified need is really what the issue is right now until we do it at a level for which they
I
can
agree.
read.
I
So-
agree.
Well, it also increases confidence level, and then they want to be more successful, and both of my girls were
Let's go
saying, oh, we
to-
read
We're
about
running out of
this.
time, so we do need to move on to results indicators.